In the heart of the Soviet winter February 1959, 9 ambitious hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute set out on an expedition into the Siberian wilderness. Their goal was simple in words but daunting in reality: to reach the remote and treacherous peak of Ural Mountain. This was no ordinary hike. It was a test of endurance against some of the harshest conditions nature could offer. Leading the team was Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student with a passion for adventure and a proven track record in survival. The group, composed of skilled and experienced mountaineers, sought to challenge themselves against the unforgiving elements of the northern Ural Mountains. Ural, fully prepared, and UN, with its relentless winds, sub-zero temperatures, and unforgiving terrain, had long been a proving ground for elite adventurers. For these young men and women, however, it was not just another climb. It was the ultimate adventure. A journey into a land where nature showed no mercy. Fully prepared and undeterred by the brutal Siberian cold, they ventured forth into the white wilderness, unaware of the mystery that would forever etch their names into history. Every aspect of the expedition was carefully planned: meals, equipment, emergency protocols, and checkpoints to document their journey and demonstrate their mountaineering skill. For many, this trek was a chance to earn the prestigious Grade 2 hiking certification, the highest accolade in Soviet mountaineering. Yet, despite their thorough preparations, an inexplicable force awaited them in the desolate wilderness, one that would turn their quest into a haunting mystery. In late January 1959, 10 enthusiastic hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute set out for Ural Mountain, driven by camaraderie and an unyielding desire to test their endurance against Siberia's unforgiving elements. Led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, known for his precision and leadership, the group pressed forward with confidence. However, fate intervened when Yuri Yudin, plagued by chronic health issues worsened by the cold, was forced to turn back. His reluctant departure spared his life, leaving him as the expedition's sole survivor. The remaining 9 pressed on, undeterred by worsening weather. By February 1st, they reached the remote slopes of Kolatsyakal, Dead Mountain, as the native Mansi people called it. Though the name was a grim warning, it only fueled their resolve. What none of them knew was that they were stepping into the heart of one of history's most chilling unsolved mysteries. Determined to press onward, the hikers camped that evening on an exposed slope, ignoring the safer tree line below. Whether Dyatlov aimed to harden his team for harsher conditions or lost his bearings in the intensifying snowstorm remains unclear. That choice, however, left them dangerously vulnerable. Their final diary entry, dated February 1st, described worsening blizzard conditions, yet gave no hint of the nightmare to come. The group was expected to return by February 12th. When no word came, families grew frantic, urging authorities to act. Delays hampered the response, but by February 20th, a search party was finally dispatched, retracing the group's route through the brutal wilderness. 6 days later, searchers stumbled upon a chilling discovery. Half buried in the snow, the hiker's tent lay eerily still, yet something was horribly wrong. Its fabric was shredded, not torn from the outside, but slashed open from within, as though the group had fled in sudden terror. What had driven experienced hikers to rip through their own shelter and vanish into the deadly cold? That haunting question would mark the beginning of one of history's most baffling unsolved mysteries, the Dyatlov Pass incident. Their belongings were scattered but untouched, from boots and outerwear to essential equipment, all left behind in a moment of frantic urgency. As the searchers pieced together the scene, their unease deepened. Outside the tent, they found a trail of footprints leading away from the camp, weaving down the slope toward the tree line nearly a mile below. Oddly, many of these footprints appeared to have been made by bare or lightly socked feet, a perplexing and eerie discovery in the biting cold, where temperatures could easily plummet to 30 degrees Celsius. What could have compelled these experienced hikers, who knew the unforgiving nature of such conditions, to abandon their shelter and head into the freezing night without proper clothing or gear? As the search continued, the first bodies were discovered at the forest edge. Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Kravanishenko were found lying side by side, wearing only their underwear, with signs that they had attempted to build a small fire. But the flames hadn't saved them from the relentless cold. Dyatlov, along with 2 other hikers, Rustam Slobodin and Zinaida Kolmogorova were found scattered between the tent and the forest, positioned as if trying to crawl back toward their camp. Slobodin's body bore a fractured skull, yet there was no clear indication of what had caused such trauma in these isolated mountains. 2 months passed before the remaining bodies were found, buried in a ravine deeper within the forest. These final 4, Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles, Lyudmila Dubonina, Alexander Kolovatov, and Semyon Zolotaryov, had apparently succumbed to something more than cold. Thibault-Brignoles had suffered severe skull trauma, while Dubonina and Zolotaryov had crushed ribs. Dubonina's eyes and tongue were missing, and Zolotaryov bore other strange injuries. These injuries were internally devastating but lacked the external wounds usually associated with blunt force trauma. As Soviet investigators began piecing together what little evidence they had, the mystery only deepened. They found traces of radiation on some of the hikers' clothing, adding another layer of strangeness. An official report concluded the deaths were due to a compelling natural force, but this vague determination raised more questions than it answered. What compelling force could so completely baffle investigators? Over the years, a myriad of theories emerged. One theory speculated that the hikers had encountered a military testing zone, fleeing in terror from explosions or radiation caused by secret weapon tests. Others suggested that an avalanche might have forced them to evacuate their tent in panic, although there were no clear signs of an avalanche in the area. Some even proposed that infrasound, or rare, low-frequency sound produced by strong winds, caused the hikers to experience intense feelings of dread and panic, leading them to abandon their camp in a frantic haze. But one of the most accepted theory is that in 2019, on the 60th anniversary of the tragedy, Russian authorities officially reopened the case. After months of investigation, they concluded that the hikers had died due to an avalanche. But the results satisfied almost no one. Too many strange details remained: the torn tent, the barefoot escape, the internal injuries without external trauma. It all still felt off. Then, in 2021, researchers from ETH Zurich and EPFL, led by Johann Gaum and Alexander Puzrin, used computer simulations to revisit the avalanche theory. Their model focused on a slab avalanche, a compacted layer of snow breaking loose after a delay. According to them, the hikers' decision to cut into the slope for their tent weakened the snowpack. Hours later, the slab slid silently, hitting the tent. It could explain the internal injuries, the panic, and why they fled without proper clothing. But the model didn't explain everything. The radiation found on some clothing, for example, was later attributed to one of the hikers, who had previously worked at a nuclear institute. Still, not all garments were affected, and not all answers were clear. These remain the most scientific and accepted theories so far. But each theory had its flaws. The injuries suffered by Dubonina, Zolotaryov, and Thibault-Brignoles were far too severe to be explained by mere hypothermia or panic. Additionally, the eerie detail of Dubonina's missing tongue and eyes seemed almost ritualistic, as though some dark force had exacted a gruesome toll on the hikers. Another possible explanation, known as paradoxical undressing, suggests that as hypothermia set in, the hikers may have felt falsely overheated and removed their clothes, hastening their deaths. But again, this fails to account for the inexplicable injuries and the slashed tent. Some researchers suspect the involvement of the local Mansi people, yet there was no evidence to suggest a hostile encounter. Some believe the tragedy of Dyatlov Pass was no mere accident, pointing to the ominous name Dead Mountain as a sign of forces beyond human understanding. Over the years, investigators, theorists, and thrill-seekers have been drawn to its haunting mystery. A solitary memorial now stands in the snow, honoring the 9 lives lost to the Ural wilderness. Those who visit speak of an unsettling stillness, as if the mountain itself is guarding its secrets. The icy winds whisper through snow-laden trees, carrying faint echoes of that night. The slopes, blanketed in a suffocating silence, seem to hold their breath, unwilling to reveal the truth. Locals, hardened by Siberia's relentless winters, still speak of Otorten in hushed tones, wary of its shadowed peaks. Somewhere beneath the frozen earth lies the answer, hidden in the endless white, untouched by time. On that fateful night, the boundary between the known and the unexplainable was violently crossed. A tent slashed from within, footprints fading into nothing, and 9 lives stolen by an unseen force. Decades later, the riddle persists, as chilling and unsolved as ever. In these remote, merciless heights, perhaps some mysteries are never meant to be understood.